Sophie Cunningham, who is become the summer it girl, the blonde bombshell, the bombastic battler. Yeah, Caitlin Clark's wing woman in the WNBA. She is standing up once again for Caitlin Clark. And this time, it's a little ridiculous that she even has to. I mean, think about this. Caitlin Clark is, of course, the face of the WNBA.
Sophie Cunningham just went nuclear defending Caitlin Clark, and the haters are absolutely losing their minds about it. The newest podcast queen didn't hold back when people tried to claim Caitlin isn't the face of the WNBA. Her response was brutal, direct, and has everyone talking. The meltdown from critics has been absolutely epic to watch. Do you think Sophie Cunningham was right to go this hard defending Caitlin Clark, or did she cross the line? Let me know in the comments below.
We can't have a straight white girl. What about all the sisters and the white lesbians that came before to build show of a league? Well, that's why it's show of a league, because the sisters and the straight white girls and the lesbian white girls that tried to build it before them, guess what? It don't work. Of course, being 2025 means there are some people out there who want to argue.
So, Sophie Cunningham just launched her own podcast with Colin Cowherd's company, The Volume, and her very first episode was an absolute masterclass in how to break the internet. The girl came out swinging harder than a heavyweight boxer, and her target was anyone dumb enough to claim that Caitlin Clark isn't the face of the WNBA. Let's be real here. Sophie knew exactly what she was doing. You don't launch a podcast and immediately go after the most controversial topic in women's basketball unless you want maximum attention. And boy, did she get it.
It really pisses me off when people are like, she's not the face of the league.
Who would be?
What?
Sabrina? No.
No, there's really good, well-known people in our league. I'm not discrediting them. Like, we have a lot of badasses in our league.
Yeah.
Like, hell yeah to that. I'm all for that. But when people try to argue that she's not the face of our league, or if our league would be where we're at without her, you're dumb as
Yeah.
You're literally dumb.
Here's what our blonde bombshell had to say about people who think Caitlin isn't the face of the league. It literally pisses me off when people are like, she's not the face of the league. Who would be what? Sabrina? No. There's really good, well-known people in our league. I'm not discrediting them. We have a lot of badasses in our league. But when people try to argue that she's not the face of our league, or if our league would be where we're at without her, you're dumb as expletive. Now, I cleaned that up a little bit because Sophie got a bit spicy with her language, but you get the point. She basically called anyone who disagrees with her an idiot. And honestly, the math backs her up.
It's like, I know the talks that Phoenix had in the locker room of like, no, we're going to prove her, we're going to show her what the W really is. You know what I mean? And like, I get it to a certain extent. And like every rookie coming into the league, that's how you're going to treat them. But there's just more for her. So it's her second year. And like, now being on her team and like seeing it, I'm like, what are people doing? Like, actually it's just too much. And like, it's just, I'm over. And if I'm saying it's too much, then it's probably too much.
No, that's so fair.
Like, that's...
The reaction to Sophie's comments have been absolutely hilarious to watch. You've got people on social media having complete meltdowns because someone dared to state the obvious. Caitlin Clark is the reason most casual fans even know the WNBA exists right now. But apparently, saying that out loud makes you the villain. The media response has been particularly entertaining. Sports journalists who spent years ignoring the WNBA are now suddenly experts on league dynamics and player hierarchy. They're writing think pieces about how Sophie's comments are problematic and divisive, as if pointing out reality is somehow harmful to the sport.
One of the biggest stars the WNBA's ever
Who's that?
had. Her name rhymes with Schmaitlin.
Hurtland?
Yeah. What has that been like, seeing her not only kind of transform a league, but also just be like,
no,
is that fair to say?
Not even just the league, but like
The
women's
sport?
basketball as a whole around the world. No, I think it's awesome. I think it's so funny because she's like 22, 23 years old and the whole world is watching her.
Yeah.
Like it is a cult following. I'm not kidding.
No, it's wild.
Like,
The airport today.
Insane.
It was like 22 everywhere.
Anywhere you go, like it is a home game wherever we play. Like
No way.
security with her 24/7. Like people are outrageous. Like think of the most famous person that you know or have met.
These same media members had no problem crowning LeBron as the face of the NBA or calling Tom Brady the face of the NFL. But when someone does the same thing for women's basketball, suddenly it's controversial. The double standard is so obvious, it's almost insulting to our intelligence. The funniest part is watching people try to argue that other players deserve the face of the league title more than Caitlin. Really? Based on what? Attendance numbers, TV ratings, merchandise sales, social media followers? Because every single metric that actually matters points to the same conclusion. Some critics have tried to argue that longevity should matter more than current impact. They point to players who have been in the league longer as more deserving of recognition. But that's not how being the face of anything works. It's about who represents a brand right now, who drives interest and engagement, who makes people want to watch that. Sophie's timing with this podcast launch couldn't have been better. She's riding the wave of being Caitlyn's teammate and defender, and she's turned that into her own media opportunity. That's smart business, even if it's making some people extremely uncomfortable. The business side of this whole situation is fascinating. Sophie's signing with Colin Cowherd's company shows she understands where the media landscape is headed. Traditional sports media is dying, and podcast platforms are where the real conversations happen. By aligning herself with Cowherd, she's positioning herself to reach the exact audience that's driving WNBA growth. What's really got people twisted is that Sophie didn't just defend Caitlyn. She went after specific players by name. When she mentioned Sabrina Ionescu as someone who definitely isn't the face of the league, you could practically hear the keyboards clicking as people rush to defend their favorite players. But here's the thing. Sophie's not wrong. Sabrina is a great player, but when's the last time a Sabrina Ionescu game broke viewership records? When's the last time people lined up for hours just to get her autograph? When's the last time her injury status was front page news on ESPN? The answer is never. And that's not a knock on Sabrina or any other player. It's just reality. Caitlin Clark operates on a different level when it comes to mainstream appeal and cultural impact. The economics tell the whole story. Fever games consistently draw higher ratings than games without Caitlin. Merchandise sales spike whenever she's involved. Arena attendance is dramatically higher when she plays. These aren't opinions, they're measurable facts that prove Sophie's point. Yet somehow, acknowledging these facts is treated as disrespectful to other players. It's the participation trophy mentality applied to professional sports, where everyone has to be equally celebrated regardless of their actual contribution to the league's success. Sophie's defense of Caitlyn comes at an interesting time, because there's been this weird narrative building that maybe Caitlyn isn't as important to the league as people think. Some media members and former players have been pushing this idea that the WNBA was doing just fine before Caitlyn arrived, and would continue to do just fine without her. That's complete nonsense. And Sophie called it out perfectly. The WNBA wasn't doing just fine before Caitlyn. They were playing in front of half-empty arenas, while most of America didn't even know when their season started. Now you got games selling out in record TV ratings, but we're supposed to pretend that's a coincidence. The historical context makes Sophie's defense even more powerful. The WNBA has existed for over 25 years, and all that time, they never had a player who could consistently draw mainstream attention the way Caitlyn does. That's not an accident, and it's not something that should be minimized to protect feelings. The hate that Sophie is getting for her comments perfectly illustrates a problem with WNBA discourse right now. You can't state obvious facts without being accused of disrespecting other players or being divisive. It's like everyone has to pretend that all players are equally important to the league's success, even when the numbers clearly show otherwise.
Gained, I think, 500,000 followers and such, and your jersey selling out. How cool is that for your...
Yeah, it's cool. It's funny what kind of people are attracted to. I'm just trying to keep the main thing. The main thing is that's basketball, trying to win games, sticking up for my teammates. And that's all part of it. I think all that stuff it's fun and whatnot, but at the end of the day, we need to win some basketball.
The social media reaction has been particularly revealing. Former players who couldn't draw 1,000 viewers to their own games are now lecturing Sophie about respect and humility. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. These critics seem to think that acknowledging star power somehow diminishes everyone else's contributions. That's not how professional sports work. Every successful league is built around marquee players who drive interest and revenue. The WNBA finally has won, and instead of celebrating it, some people want to tear it down. Sophie's podcast debut also came right around the same time as some other WNBA drama that perfectly highlights the league's issues with handling success. Dana Bonner made a return to Indianapolis after basically quitting on Indiana Fever midseason, and she got booed by fans who paid their hard-earned money to attend the game. Instead of acknowledging that fans have every right to be upset about a player who abandoned their team, we got lectures about how the booing was distasteful. Kalia Copper, who recently had her own embarrassing moment on the court, took it upon herself to scold Fever fans for their reaction. The disconnect is incredible. You got players who think fans should just politely applaud everyone, regardless of what they did, while those same fans are spending hundreds of dollars on tickets because of one specific player that critics keep trying to minimize. The DeWanna Bonner situation actually strengthened Sophie's argument about Caitlyn being the face of the league. Fans didn't show up to boo Bonner because she was a star. They showed up because Caitlyn was there, even though she couldn't play. That's the kind of drawing power that defines a franchise player. Sophie's willingness to speak honestly about Caitlyn's impact stands in stark contrast to the tiptoeing around reality that we get from most players and media members. She's not worried about hurting feelings or maintaining some artificial sense of quality among players. The podcast format is perfect for Sophie because it lets her speak without the usual media filters. She doesn't have to worry about saying something that might upset a reporter or create drama in the locker room. She can just tell the truth as she sees it. And the truth is that Caitlin Clark changed everything for the WNBA. The format also allows the kind of nuanced discussion that gets lost in traditional interviews. Sophie can explain her reasoning, provide context, and push back against narratives that don't make sense. That's exactly what the WNBA discourse needs more of. What's particularly funny about the backlash to Sophie's comments is that most of it is coming from people who probably couldn't name 5 WNBA players before Caitlin arrived. These are the same people who are now subtly experts on league history and player contributions. The gatekeeping is real, and it's counterproductive. Instead of welcoming new fans and celebrating the player who brought them to the sport, some people want to lecture them about who they should and shouldn't appreciate. That's a guaranteed way to drive people away. Sophie's decision to launch her podcast with Colin Cowherd's company also shows she understands the media landscape. Cowherd has built his career on taking controversial positions and generating discussion. And that's exactly what Sophie did with her first episode. She's learning from the best when it comes to creating content that gets people talking. The partnership with the Volume also gives Sophie access to a much larger audience than she'd reach through traditional WNBA media channels. She's thinking bigger than just a current fan base, which is exactly the kind of mindset the league needs more of. The dumb as expletive comment that has everyone so worked up is actually pretty mild compared to what gets said on most sports podcasts. But because it's coming from a WNBA player defending Caitlin Clark, suddenly it's treated like she committed some major sin. The pearl clutching over Sophie's language is another example of the different standards applied to women's sports. Male athletes say much worse things regularly without generating nearly as much outrage. But a woman defends her teammate with some colorful language, and it becomes a national controversy. This whole situation perfectly captures the weird dynamic around Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. You've got record-breaking numbers and unprecedented mainstream attention, but there's this constant undercurrent of resentment about how and why that success happened. Some of that resentment comes from players who feel like they've been overlooked. Some comes from media members who don't like having their narratives challenged. And some comes from fans who preferred when the WNBA was a smaller, more insular community. But here's the reality. You can't have it both ways. You can't want mainstream success and then complain when it arrives in a package you didn't expect. Sophie understands this, which is why her defense of Caitlin is so important. Sophie's defense of Caitlin is refreshing because it cuts through all the political correctness and just states the obvious. Yes, Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA. Yes, the league would be in a much different place without her. And yes, anyone who argues otherwise is probably letting their personal feelings cloud their judgment. The timing of Sophie's comments is also significant because they come while Caitlin is still dealing with her injury. There have been whispers about whether the Fever can maintain their success without their star player, and Sophie's passionate defense suggests that her teammates understand exactly how important Caitlin is to everything they're doing. What's really driving people crazy about Sophie's podcast debut is that she's not apologizing for Caitlin's success or trying to minimize it to make other players feel better. She's celebrating it and defending it, which apparently makes her a villain in some circles. The reaction to Sophie's comments also highlights how sensitive people are about discussing individual impact in women's basketball. You can talk about LeBron James or Tom Brady being the face of their respective leagues without controversy, but do the same thing in the WNBA and suddenly you're being divisive. Sophie's willingness to name names and make specific comparisons is exactly what the WNBA needs more of. Instead of generic praise for everyone, she's making actual arguments about who deserves what level of recognition. That's how real sports debates work. The fact that Sophie felt the need to defend Caitlin at all shows how backwards some of the discourse around the WNBA has become. When the most popular player in your league's history needs defending for being called the face of the league, you've got serious problems with your messaging. That Sophie's podcast success is going to be interesting to watch because she's clearly not afraid to speak her mind. If her first episode is any indication, she's going to continue pushing back against the narratives that don't make sense. Even if it makes some people uncomfortable, the hate that Sophie is receiving for defending her teammate also shows the weird loyalty test that exists in WNBA discourse. Apparently, being supportive of Caitlin Clark automatically means you're disrespecting everyone else, which is a completely ridiculous standard. What Sophie did with her podcast debut was smart marketing and honest commentary rolled into one. She generated massive attention for her new show while defending someone who deserves defending. The fact that this is controversial says more about the critics than it does about Sophie. The WNBA should be celebrating players like Sophie, who are willing to promote the league and its biggest stars instead of trying to tear them down. Her passionate defense of Caitlyn is exactly the kind of teammate support that builds winning cultures. Sophie's comments also highlight the generational divide in how people view sports marketing and promotion. Older players and media members seem to think everyone should get equal praise regardless of their actual impact, while younger players like Sophie understand that star power drives success. The bottom line is that Sophie Cunningham said what needed to be said, and the people losing their minds about it are proving her point. If you can't handle someone stating obvious facts about who drives interest in your league, then maybe you need to examine why those facts make you so uncomfortable. Sophie's podcast debut was a masterclass in how to generate attention while speaking truth to power. She defended her teammate, promoted her new show, and exposed the backwards thinking that holds the WNBA back from maximizing its success. The haters can stay mad. Sophie just proved that speaking the truth is still the best policy. Sophie Cunningham just showed everyone how to defend your teammate while launching a successful podcast. The meltdown from people who can't handle basic facts about Caitlin Clark's impact has been absolutely epic. What did you think of Sophie's comments? Was she spot on or out of line? Smash that like button and subscribe for more WNBA truth bombs.